Well, I've got my good friend and buddy and used to be fellow Allstate agent, Kevin Mlynarek, as our guest today. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, how you doing? Nice to appreciate the invitation today. Good seeing you, Rusty and Maria.
Absolutely. We've got Maria on here who's helped facilitating this. What's up, Maria?
I am wearing my Auburn jersey. It's
Got a
homecoming in
Bo
Auburn.
Jackson jersey.
Yes. Super excited. My grandparents are coming this weekend, so excited for that.
Awesome. So today's a spirit day, Kevin, here at the office. And so you walk around, everybody's wearing their team colors today. And I know we're talking about the fall weather. Man, it is so nice here this morning. And I've got this glass garage door behind me. I'm dying to go lift it up so we can get some of this weather in here. But it's probably a little cooler up your way in Michigan, right?
It is. Fall is in full swing as of like this week. All of a sudden, it just hits. It's like summer, fall. So it's actually 48 degrees today, and it's September the 23rd. So it's fall football weather.
Man, that's
awesome.
awesome.
I had a fire last night. Actually, we're sitting by a fire, so it's
how cool.
It's good. Yeah,
we had what they call, I guess, a fake fall here last week, and it was Maria, in the low 60s maybe at night, and then low 80s, and it was so nice. Humidity was low, and then yes, this week it hit again hard, and it was probably in the upper 90s yesterday. It was brutal. So I think it's coming back down this weekend though.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you being on here. I'm super pumped to have you. We've talked about doing this for a while, and it's exciting to have you on. And I know a lot of our team members know you through Allstate and our relationship that we've had over the years. And you and I, we were just talking about this. We've known each other, I don't know, the last 7 or 8 years through our connection with Allstate. And if you don't mind, just share a little background with us and kind of tell us, who you are and your background and kind of what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I don't even know if you know the beginning story, and it actually ties in to, our company, Ideal Traits. But right out of college, I was planning on going to law school, and law school started in September. I graduated a little bit early in December. So it's like, well, I need to find something to do in the meantime and probably make some money. Law school is expensive. And I was kind of looking at my car, and it's a little bit dirty. I was like, well, I could kind of use a new car. And I was like, well, why don't I just go sell cars? If I sell cars, I can make some money. And at the same time, I can drive a new car. So that was my plan. I went to the first dealership, and they said, no, you don't have any experience. Do you have any sales experience? No, but I think I can do it. Next dealership, no, you're too young. You can't sell. You don't have any, background. Third dealership, no again. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm used to, everything I applied for prior to, like I got the job, but it's like car wash and valet cars and, things like that. But now it's time to get a real job. Well, I still didn't give up, being persistent like me and you are, Rusty. I kept going, and I applied to the fourth dealership. And when I walked in, I met the owner, Bill Hahn Jr. He greets me, and he said, hey, go fill out this application and assessment. I was like, oh, okay, this is different. Fill it all out, turn it in. He comes over 10 minutes later, and he's like, all right, time for your interview. So go in the interview, I'm talking to, all the managers there. And they go, well, based on this assessment, it says that you can sell. And I was like, well, yeah, I can sell for sure. And inside I'm going, yeah, I think I can. But it's like, it kind of goes back to day one of my career. Was like, they picked me, long story short, obviously I got the job, and I started selling cars. And after about 9 months, when I was about to go to law school, I got promoted into management. And, the story goes on from there. And then as a manager, got up to sales manager and general manager. Whenever we hired anybody in the dealership, the owner of the dealership is you personality profile everybody. It didn't matter if you're a porter or general manager, everybody in between. They own 3 dealerships. It's 100% what you had to do. And then from there, worked my way up to general manager. And my son was born. And so he was born December 31st in 2005. And that was the day that I knew things would have to change. I knew I wasn't going to put in all those long hours. Like I had to do something different, create a more flexible schedule, and to be home for the kids and the family, which is most important. So long story short, I ended up searching out the next employment opportunity for me. And I wanted to do something that I could build a business and build a sales team, because that's all that I really knew how to do. And I loved doing it. And Allstate agent, would come and help us out with, our clients. And she said, you should be an Allstate agent. I'm like, hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And just kind of went through the motions, met the manager, did all my studying. And, come January of 2006, 1 year later, is when, I started my Allstate training, and we opened up March 1st of 2007.
Wow,
So
2007,
that's
man.
the background.
That is awesome, man. And so I'm not going to call myself a fanboy, but I think there for a while I was a little fanboy of Kevin here. We talked in previous episodes about finding mentors, and Kevin was somebody who was doing really big things up in Michigan, Allstate nationally. I remember seeing some slides at a conference or something where they were showing numbers of top producing agency owners in the country. I kept seeing this name. I couldn't figure out how to pronounce his last name, but I'm like, I've got to reach out to this guy. And I remember trying to find you in Outlook. I couldn't figure out how to spell your name. And so I had to go on this mad search trying to reach out to you. I'm like, I've got to learn from this guy. And, and Kevin, was sort of a mentor to me and helped me in a lot of the growth we were going through and trying to get to that next level. And it's amazing how iron sharpens iron. And he's a great example of somebody who is, very willing to give back, very willing to, brainstorm and took my phone calls. And of course that's turned, down the road. I've kind of been in that situation with others that have come to me, and it's a really exciting journey. When you can take others along with you and help develop. And Kevin, I'm going to brag on you for a second, just with your Allstate accolades. Let's see, you've won Best in Company with Allstate. Now, was it once or was it twice?
Twice. Yeah,
twice. Okay. All right. So this is a milestone I never reached. It's been one of my goals. But basically, Best in Company out of 10,000 Allstate agents in the country, Kevin has finished number one out of 10,000 twice, and so it's quite an accomplishment.
The third time, I missed it by 7 cars. It didn't bother me at all. Down to like literally the last day.
We need a hat trick from you for sure.
I had, I had back surgery in like the last week of the month, but they're just all excuses now. It's still just 2.
2 is good enough.
It doesn't bother me.
Hey, we missed finishing second place a few years ago. We missed it by 3 cars. So it's one of those things where like it just kind of ticks you off and you're ready to go after it harder the next year. But anyway, so that is obviously quite an accomplishment. It doesn't happen by accident. One thing I was really impressed with Kevin in the Allstate world was, he was a business owner. He wasn't, an insurance agent per se, even though I'm sure you evolved into that owner like we all have. But what I was really impressed with was, number one, he had a great team. He had a great sales team, particularly. And I remember picking your brain over the years, like, how are you finding these people? Like, how are you finding these really sharp people? And then, kind of went into, Rusty, here's sort of our recruiting process and our screening process. And once we get them on board, here's our training. And like, you guys were doing role playing with your agents, and we had never done role playing where we actually have a sales manager sit down with a salesperson and have those uncomfortable, awkward, overcome objection conversations. And it's really the first I was exposed to that in the insurance business. I'd never really thought about setting up essentially like a sales call center, if you will, and being that intentional. So kind of talk about that and, how you got there, and then how that evolved into eventually the founding of Ideal Trades.
Yeah. Well, really the foundation was at the dealership. And I was just kind of following suit of what the program was there when I started, and ended up carrying that through of you got to train, and you got to train every day. And we would work on overcoming objections and role playing in our sales meeting every day. And so it's just something that I carried over, and that it translated real well into the insurance industry, in which, along with the hiring process too. So before we would hire anybody, as I mentioned, it was a requirement. Like the owner said, you have got to give them a personality profile. And I did test them a few times, and I ended up sitting in his office, and I had to answer to the fact of, well, why did you hire this person? Like, I saw the assessment. I said, well, I kind of thought they were different, And at the time, he's like, he'd be like, now you do realize, like, yeah, that's on my dime, which is true. So I'm making decisions on who to hire. And I went against the assessment a couple times, and it's like, that cost me a lot of money. And so, but through the whole process of the dealership, the transition was fairly, it was fairly simple, only because I just did all I knew how to do, and create a sales team, and make sure that you train every day. And when you're hiring people, you have to hire the right person. And when you hire the right person and you've got the right team around you, that's when our businesses flourish the most.
No doubt.
And you can think back, and I can think back of the best times of the year, when we were best in the company. That was my best team ever. And that's what happens, is better teams, better hires just make better teams. So that's where that translation came. And, during that time, Allstate would ask me to speak around the country, and, just say, sharing your experiences. And while I share my experiences, they say, well, how do you do it? And it's like, well, you got to have great team members. How do you grade team members? Well, you have a personality profile assessment. It's like, you guys are using those, right? And they'd be like, no. And it was kind of foreign to me to think. I just assumed it, because it's the only thing I knew. Like, literally right out of college, this is how you do it.
Right.
And so ultimately ended up, sharing the experiences of how we found great team members. And then at that point, finally, the day came where I called up my brother, who was also an Allstate agent, top in country, and said, you know what, we need to help these agents. So we're going to open up a personality profile assessment company and help people across the country. And that's what we did in March of 2012. So
Wow.
It's been 10 years
since
now.
2012. No kidding. Well,
Yeah.
What's interesting is, when I first started with Allstate in 2009, again, of course, Laura Harris, who's sort of an icon in the Allstate world. When I first started, I remember I think she spoke maybe to my class that, when I first started, and I'm thinking, man, this lady is so sharp. And I reached out to her, and I'm like, hey, could you help me or give me some advice? And, it turned into like a 2-hour call or something. And then she sent me an email with remember, it's like Laura's stuff or whatever. It's like all these.
Oh yeah, the package.
Word documents, like all this package of stuff, like compensation plans for the service people, salespeople, like all this stuff. And I'm like, she just gave it to me for free. And I'm like, this is amazing. And a big part of her process was using personality assessments. And, again, I'd done personality assessments in the past, but I'm like, well, if Laura Harris is doing it, I'm going to do it. So I started using a company at the time. I think it was called Caliper. At some point, we've used DISC, we've used Omnia Group, Myers-Briggs. I mean, there's tons of them out there. And then it was really cool when you launched this, even though there are a lot of personality companies for testing out there, I think, number one, you made it to where, there was a plan in place that there was not just you pay for a one-time use, although y'all may offer that. It was like, I'd pay like $350 or something for a caliper profile, and I would use it at the very end of the interview process.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, if I really feel like I'm about to hire this person, I'm going to spend this $350. Because I was, broke. I mean, I didn't have any money, you know, to
Sure.
invest in this stuff. And so like, and looking back, I'm like, how backwards is that? That I'm using a personality assessment right before I make an offer. Or
Mhm.
think if I had used that at the beginning to help maybe in screening or to help maybe even guide me through my interview questions based on the assessment results, right? And that's the biggest thing. And that's why I switched to you guys in like 2 seconds, because I was able to then use it as part of my recruiting and screening process, which again just took us, fast forward, super fast with our recruiting. And not only that, there was an actual process that you guys sort of again ingrained with the it's not just the assessment, it's a process. So if you don't mind, just talk about that, because I do think that's something that makes you guys different than a lot of just, you can buy these assessments, anywhere online or whatever, but tell me about how you guys incorporated that into your recruiting.
Yeah. And I think it did kind of revolutionized how people recruited, because there were a lot of, so the top 20%, we would say, did what you did and Laura Harris, and they'd spend the money. And then the bottom 80, they probably didn't spend any money at all. They just looked at it as too expensive.
Mhm.
And just the cost of a bad hire, I mean, it's just astronomical. So anything that we can do to help improve it. A lot of times we're the biggest problem is because we get emotional about the hire. Like we need somebody just left and we need to hire. And so we look over here, we have this empty chair and we need to fill the chair. And so now we get emotional about it. And anybody that we talk to, oh, you're interested in the job ad? And then we start talking to them, and whatever they say, good or bad, we rationalize it into, I'm going to fill the chair here. I'm going to fill the chair here.
Right.
Instead of making a logical approach, we're doing emotional. So, Rusty, are you going to show up on time? And you're like, yes. And I'm like, yes. Rusty, you like to make sales calls? He's like, I mean, kind of. Sometimes I'm like, I can work with that. Right? And then all of a sudden, I'm putting Rusty in the chair, and maybe it's not the best fit. Obviously, you would be with your personality, because I already know what it is. But just as an example,
Raging lunatic. Is that
right.
a result?
But it's like we make them out to who we want them to be, and we put them in the box of filling that chair. And it's like, let's not do that. You can't do that. You have to make a logical approach. So that's where the assessment comes into play, is before we get too deep down, before our emotions take over, before we get in that interview and we've already rationalized how they're going to sell so much, work so hard, do so many things for our company. Let's take the logic first. So by providing the assessment right up front, allowing them to take it, now we can learn so much more about them and their personality prior to getting our emotions involved. And what we did with the assessment is, a lot of the other assessments came with these 20 pages of information. And we heard from our clients, because ours started out about 12, and then we heard from everybody, and we literally turned it into a one-page document. Now there's more if you want more to dig in, but what we did is just make it simple to understand. So 3 paragraphs about them, and about what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses and how to manage them. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, we go into the numbers, a numerical value. We all understand what 0 to 100, what that means. 100 is high and 0 is low. And so we measure that against their motivation and drive, their persuasive and convincing ability, structure, routine, and thorough and compliance. And then we measure that against how they view themselves under pressure on the job and how other people view it. And so all these numbers are there. And then if you hover over them, you again get more detail, but we want to make it real concise and easy to use. So by doing that, we've helped so many, which is the best part of it, of Ideal Traits, is knowing the effect that we're having on so many families. Because I truly believe that it's like we're helping the agent hire the right person, not the wrong one. And the wrong just means not suited for the role, not a bad person, of course. So they hire the right person, and that changed that person's family forever, right? It creates them a better opportunity. Now their kids can go to a different school and they can provide better, and maybe they move into a new home because they've got better income. And that's the candidate. Now you've got the agent who wins because they hired the right person. One day they become sales manager, and on and on and on, and maybe one day own the agency, which I've got a quick story. And as you know, that I've just sold my agency. So we'll go back 7 years from now. I put my ad out there through Ideal Traits, obviously, and I get this application. Application comes across, 20 years old. The only prior employment was a plumber's assistant. Okay. No insurance, he had no background, no sales experience whatsoever. Like really no business getting even an interview. And his current role was McDonald's. True story. McDonald's, 20-year-old kid, no experience, no college, no sales, no nothing. And I'm just like, and I looked at the assessment because it came in, we do that first, and it says that he'd be great and that he could sell. I'm like, I mean, I got to interview him, right? I have to. So bring him in, interview him. And I'm like, well, I'll start you out as telemarketer. Then he goes into sales. Then he goes into sales management. So now, 7.5 years later, on July 31st of 2022, Matt Saint now owns the agency. And he bought the $10 million agency from me. This is the 20-year-old kid. He's now married. He's got 3 kids, and he owns a $10 million Allstate agency in Lake Orion, Michigan. And it's such a cool thing knowing that, the part that it played, and how ironic that all worked out that way. And it kind of reminds me of the kid who wanted to sell cars, but no one gave him a chance until someone gave an assessment. And so you can see now how all the pieces tie together. And I think a lot of businesses start that way, is there's that passion for something that they know that they can help and serve, or there could be a pain point that they solve themselves and that they can help others. And that's, both of those kind of tie in with me. So, doing that assessment up front, back to your hiring process, makes it about logic. And then once we know the baseline personality, we bring them in, do the interview. And then in today's world, we're doing really these virtual interviews.
Right. When we first started this, and I believe it was again, you guys kind of simplified it into again, when you first started, it's probably, hey, here's the assessment, but then it's like, how can you use this assessment as a tool in the whole recruiting and screening process, right? So as you know, as I've learned over the years, just getting the assessment and just relying solely on that is just one component, right? And so it fits into a bigger, broader picture of the entire process. And I found over the years, as I'm sure you have, that your time is valuable. And when you have someone come in and you're asking them to do a phone interview or to come in and do an interview, it takes time away from their work, from your work. And it's just a very time consuming process. And you guys were able to break that down at the time into a 10-step process. Yeah. And I think you guys have even simplified it from there. Can you walk us through, like, how does the assessment piece fit into the overall picture, like from step 1 to now, I believe it's step 4, from step 1 to step 4, walk us through how that's incorporated.
Yeah. So the step 1 is really getting your name out there and getting the advertising and the marketing of your position. So you've got to do some market research and look in your market. I mean, times have changed for sure. I was out seeing a buddy of ours, actually, Jeremy Olson in Washington, and we were going through the grocery store, and I saw a sign that said now hiring $21 an hour. $21 an hour to just start in a grocery store. And so, it's really important that when marketing, you understand, what is the market paying now for your positions. And it's a lot more than it was. I look at this as a 3-legged stool. Number 1, your ad has to be seen. And to get your ad seen, you're going to have to put some money behind it. You're going to have to spend some money so you're not on page 42 of Indeed, as an example. With Ideal Traits, when you create a job ad through templates, we're going to send it out to up to 100 job boards. But there's the top 3 or 4 where you're going to get for sure the lion's share of 99% of traffic. So once you've paid money on it and it's seen and it's on page, we'll call it 1, 2, or 3, it's visible. Now somebody can see it. After they see it, they start to read it. And if they like what they read, then now we've got 2 things down. You have to have those 2. It's got to be seen. They read it and they like it. If they don't like it, they're out. They don't apply. So they like what they read. And then the third step is they look at the compensation. So it's got to be within the market. And so if your compensation is in line or better than in line, then they apply. So that's what it takes to get somebody to apply. It's got to be seen. They have to like what they read, load it up with all of the benefits, Saturdays off, whatever you got. And then they have to like the compensation, and then they apply. So from that point, we go right to the assessment. So they're automatically, and they apply inside Ideal Trades with the application, where they're given the application in a 4-part assessment. So we look at their resume, they do the personality profiling, we have a problem solving, and then we have a short answer question. And so once that's all compiled up, as soon as they complete that, I'll get the results. And now I'm taking, as an example, 10 candidates, I'm narrowing it down to 2, and now I've got 2 interviews instead of 10.
Right.
Which, as you know, and you alluded to, a massive time saver right there. You figure an hour a piece and maybe a couple people are interviewing them, and that's a lot of money. So if I can do only 20% of the interviews, the top people that I know are similar personality types to the position I'm trying to fill of my top performers in that role, then, I'm way ahead of the game. And so after the assessment, then what we do is we'll do a Zoom interview in today's world. Yeah. And we get to know them, a whole lot more. One of the questions I like to ask them is, paint your picture on a Saturday. What are you doing? Assuming they're, if you're not working, tell me about that. What are you doing? Are they doing stuff for self-improvement? Yeah, I take guitar lessons, or I'm practicing golf, and, what are they doing outside of work? Because I think that gives you a real good example of what they're doing, inside work. And I look for self-improvement, people that want to improve themselves as well. So we do go through the Zoom interview, and then depending on if it's an in-person, not a remote position, then we bring them in, and then we do the interview and, hit them with a bunch of questions. I'll bring somebody in from the same role to help describe, exactly what they will be doing. And then in the insurance world, we'd have them sit for half a day, and then they could observe and watch, what goes on and what they'd be doing in the role. After that, we bring them back into my office. And then at that point, we hit them with the question from, a Chet Holmes book, The Ultimate Sales Machine. I'm just not quite sure. Well, first we have to, hey, you like the position? Yeah, I want it. Great, that's great. I say, I'm just not quite sure you're the one. And this is for a salesperson. I don't do this with customer service. I'll crush them probably. But it would create this pressure situation and want them to really fight back. And so the salespeople fight back and they say, oh no, I'm the one. I was captain of the football team. And in my last role as salesman, I was number 1. And they start to fight back and say, this is for me. And it's great. That's a great opportunity. Again, back in the insurance world we'd have them go testing prior to bringing them on. And so by throwing some obstacles at them, you can really separate those that are willing to do whatever it takes to come work for us. And then we hired them. So yeah, that's our process.
I love it. And in a few things, there's so many little nuggets in there that we could touch on. I mean, even from the assessment of yourself, you mentioned the problem solving component of it. That's one thing I put a lot of emphasis on. And I look and see, out of the 15 questions, what are their problem solving skills results in that assessment? And when you see someone that high problem solving, at least in my experience, those are the people that can kind of figure stuff out, right? They don't need you to tell them, 20 times on how to do something, or, that, you can delegate not just tasks, but you can delegate responsibility. Right.
Yeah.
And so that has been huge for us in the problem solving world. And then the other part you mentioned, outside of just the persuasive and the organizational skills, the short answers, right? So it asks a question like, why are you interested in this position? Or, tell me about your accomplishments. And, I've been really excited about somebody and had a great interview and gone through the process. And then you may see like they do a 1 sentence answer, and it's like, they're not putting any thought into this. They're rushing through this. What does that tell me? And I'm not saying, hey, we're not going to hire them because of that. However, I may use that to maybe ask them some different questions and follow-up interviews to get is this a pattern? Is this their personality? Like, are they not going to be thorough and maybe thoughtful in this? And then you see some really interesting answers, that are very well thought out, and it tells you just more and more about the candidate. And so that's why I love to harp on, for the listeners out there, if you're using an assessment company or not, again, this is a tool. This is part of the process. It's not it's not the end all be all, right? Because you've already mentioned the assessment, you mentioned the Zoom interview, right? The in-person interview, the shadowing, there's the marketing of the position to get a candidate interested.
Yeah.
But I do find those interesting on how you can use that throughout the entire process. Again, going back to what I said, how awesome is it to use it at the beginning of the process as opposed to the very end, because you don't want to spend $300 and not hire that person, and you feel like you're just flushing that money down the toilet, right?
Yeah. And all the time you spent, right? So you marketed and somebody applied and you talked to them on the phone, you did a Zoom interview, you brought them in and you really like them. And so your emotion says, I want to fill the chair. And then the assessment comes back inconclusive, right? Or not the greatest fit. And what do we typically do? We hire them because we need it, we want it, and we go with our gut. And, so, and you're right, Rusty, it isn't the everything, isn't the end all be all. But if I could protect myself against hiring the wrong person and knowing the massive expense of that, I want to do that. Like, I want to save where I can and not spend all this extra money on so much not gonna work out. And and if it fits into a hiring budget, because you got to have that as a business, a hiring budget for the year, and set aside those dollars to be able to market the position, then it makes sense.
I love it, man. It's awesome. There's a new feature that you guys, can we talk about that? I know there's a new feature that you guys are looking at. Is that something we can talk about?
We can't.
Okay, I didn't know if it was public yet, or you sent me a link to it the other day, sort of a beta version.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, so it's not released yet, but it will be soon. We've been working on it for, I'd say, about 9 months now. And what we've heard from our clients, and just to give you an idea, Rusty, we've got 13,000 people over the 10 years that use Ideal Traits, 13,000 clients, and we've helped them hire about 60,000 staff. So we're really proud and excited of all the jobs that we've helped, businesses get there. So, but what we heard from them is, videos become so popular now, and to be able to see and to be able to save time. So we've created a video interviewing tool where people can use, where are they doing? They're on their phone, right? So you can send somebody a link and they can just take a one-way video and answer the questions. And it's a really easy tool, simple for them to use. And it'll just say, what are some of your greatest accomplishments? And they hit start and they record their video. And at the end, they hit stop and they hit submit, and then they go on to the next one. So you will be able to, as a business owner, create 5 questions that you want to see your candidates answer. And you'll be getting emails throughout the day and 5 videos and, 2 to 3 minutes a piece. So in 10 minutes time, you're going to have a really good idea about, who it is on the other end of that candidate. So it's been really fun and exciting process as we build out, this new tool.
When I think of the time it saves, and not just of, if I'm having a traditional, it's not even a traditional interview anymore. It's like you mentioned earlier, it's a Zoom video, right? So we've done our initial screening after we've kind of gone through some of these steps, and we do it with a phone interview. So we're not even doing Zoom phone interviews anymore. And I'm like asking myself, why are we not doing that? That makes so much sense. You can see a person's demeanor in person, how they're presenting themselves, and what a time saver there. And what you're doing with this new add-on and this new feature is you're saving time. You're saving me as a business owner or a hiring manager. You're saving me time. No, like going back, trying to schedule a time for me with my schedule, with the candidate's schedule, a lot of fluff that's kind of within and I'm sure just seeing again, their demeanor on how they're asking the questions. And two, one thing that I've learned, part of our trial and error, skinning our knees with using, the personality assessments when we meet with someone. A lot of times, if they're referred to us, or we have a conversation with them, we'll ask them. We'll let them know, hey, we're going to send you a link to this assessment. You're going to get instructions in your email. It takes you about an hour to take, and do it kind of, here's the kind of the conditions in which you need to take it, kind of thing. And so we've had several times over the years where you meet with someone, you're fired up about them, and you ask them to take the assessment, and then a week goes by and they haven't taken it, a week and a half, and like someone you're fired up about, you felt like you nailed it, and then you follow up with them. They're like, oh yeah, I need to do that. Well, is there really urgency there? And so that's been amazing to see, or how quick did they go through and complete it? Like I alluded to earlier, did they just blow through it, not putting any thought into it? And so the whole part of this is just it's just revealing more and more throughout the process, to your point. So you can try to make that right hire as opposed to the wrong hire for you and for the candidate, because it's exhausting for both people on both sides when it's not a mutual fit, right?
Right. No, so true. And another cool thing about it is each business is going to be able to create their own video as the first thing they see. So they log in, play the video, and it can be, you in the Pruitt Pest Control, and you welcome yourself, and I'm the owner, and what's it going to be like to work for you, and what's it like for the team, and you could show them around the office, and that way they can get a good idea if it's going to be a great fit for them as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice way to showcase.
That's great. So when do you expect to be live with this additional feature?
Well, my brother doesn't allow me to give dates out.
Rusty's ready for it.
Charge of it, but
I'm Jones in here, man.
I see your wheels are turning.
Oh, I can tell you that it's functional right now. Like, it absolutely works. But we never release anything until we thoroughly test it.
Right.
So I would say like 60 days ish, maybe less even. He would probably say more just to be safe.
I love
but
it.
It's here. Like, it's not like a thought. It works right now, and we're just perfecting it, really.
Well, I love how you guys have adapted to how the world's changing. I think, again, if you want just an assessment, you can find those out there, right? And but how have you changed at the end of the day, what's an assessment for? Well, it's part of the recruiting and hiring. It's not, that's not just if you're looking at it in isolation, what are you going to do with that information? And so, how do you take that information and incorporate it? And like I said, how can you use it throughout the process,
right?
Or to reveal any red flags or inconsistencies? And, we use the term, all the time, get the right people on the bus, right? And then get them in the right seat. And I know this really helps on both of those fronts, right?
Yeah.
An employee too. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just thinking about for me, when I was going through the hiring process, I'm also learning a lot about myself. I think, like you said, I might be good at something, and then it comes back and you're also kind of learning a lot about yourself and where you can go from there. Like, I think when I was first going through the process, I maybe thought I would be in sales, and that's kind of what everyone was doing right out of college. And then you learn about yourself and you're like, maybe this isn't the best fit. And it's really cool to go off of that and learn more about maybe what position would work best for you. So I think just on the employee side, looking at it from someone who's gone through the assessment, I think that's one of the more rewarding aspects of it. I've never interviewed before where they actually asked me, or other than just my resume, to start it off. Like it's you getting to know me as a person too. I love that.
Yeah, and it goes deeper. The ones that really maximize it, because with software, people, they get some pieces of it. But when you really maximize it as a business owner, is to be able to look at how the different personalities work together in the departments and how they work together as a team. And then you can start, the level beyond that is having the employees read each other's and how they learn their styles. And they'll, oh yeah, that is just like you. And then it just helps in communication and creating better teams overall. So, but there's so much to the software. And I think what is unique that I would say about Ideal Traits is we are like 3 or 4 different companies in one. Some companies, they just do job ads, like ZipRecruiter. Well, that's inside of our platform and Indeed. So we totally agree with that. And you can access that right through Ideal Traits. We help them create job ads. So we have job ad templates where you can literally just point and click and create your job ad, which could be another company, or an assessment company, which is the core, which is the nucleus of who we are and the most important thing. And then we're an applicant tracking system as well. So you can track the whole time. So we're basically a full recruiting software that major firms would use, that we've created for the small business owner and the medium size to be able to track all of their candidates, walk them through individual stages, communicate with them via email templates that are inside there, and star rate them, and just to be able to, keep track of them. And then you put them in the hired bucket. And then the goal is that their annual review, you kind of bring it back up and you talk to them about their strengths and their weaknesses. And so you can, again, use it as the management tool as well.
You just touched on something that's extremely valuable, right? So the different stages. So if you're trying to hire for one position, okay, it could be a sales, but we talked a lot about sales people, by the way, but this is for everything: management positions, service positions, problem solving positions, sales. I mean, the whole gamut. Yeah. And you talk about the different stages. So if let's say I have one open position, and for our company now, let's say we're trying to hire a service professional or a technician, or we're trying to hire an outside sales representative for our pest control company, right? So just to get that one hired, to get that one person here on our payroll, we may have to go through tons of job ads or resumes received, and to go through the filtering. One thing that was overwhelming for me when I was solely responsible for the hiring and recruiting was, you get the jobs out there, job ads out there, or you start getting all these responses, or you get stuff. It got overwhelming. It's like, okay, you got 30 resumes emailed to you. Right. And then now I got to go through all those resumes. Now I've got to schedule them to come in. I've got to play phone tag with them, all this stuff. It's almost overwhelming. And so you tend to hire the quickest person you can because the process is so long and tedious. And to get that one person you're going to hire for that position, it may take, and I'm sure you probably have a formula, Kevin, based on what you've seen, it may take, 20 resumes, and 10 are worth moving to the next stage. And out of those 10, 7 are worth going to the next stage. And so the tracking part of what you guys do makes it so much easier. So I can log into our account and I can see, okay, well, I've got this many new candidates that have come in. I've got this many that I'm screening. I've got this many that were in progress, this many that are shadowing, this many we've made offers to that we're waiting to hear back, whatever it is. So the workflow to help the recruiter or the business owner or whoever's doing this, I mean, it's organized it in such a way that it makes it so much easier than trying to manage all this stuff through email.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even, we'll call it the olden days where your desk was filled with resumes. You had a whole folder with just, there's no paper, it's all online and it keeps you structured, organized, which is a huge time saver and creates efficiencies. And then beyond that, if you have this bank of people that you could go back one day and revisit it. So they applied for one position. They had the personality that fit a different position. Those positions were full at the time. And then now you can just go to your bank, search that type of profile that you're looking for, and call them back up and say, hey, guess what? Now we've got a position that's open. Now you eliminated all of the time of even creating a job ad or even spending the money. I've got over 6,000 people, like just in my database I had at the agency over the 10 years.
Wow.
So it creates a great way to do it. And the other thing that I think that most people when they're hiring is because they need it right now. And instead, and Rusty, that we always talk about always be hiring. So you can passively hire with ideal traits, and meaning you don't put money and spend money on the job ad. You get it out there. Somebody might come along, but if a superstar knocks on your door for whatever role that you're looking for, you can be able to screen them easily, send them a video tool, give them the assessment, and if it seems like the perfect candidate, you can bring them in. And that way you can, create a bench of people for when you need it. And I bet you'd probably find a spot if a superstar came across you.
We use that example all the time when we were starting the pest control company. We had a position open and we filled it. And then, I asked, I think it was Lee, the president of the company, something about, as we've grown, the different positions available in the different markets. And he's like, well, we don't have that opening yet, or, we're not there yet, or something along those lines. I'm like, whoa, no, put the job postings out there for, outside sales rep. We should have that listed in every market we're in, whether we're actively hiring it or not. Because to your point, if Michael Jordan walks in your door and says, hey, can I come play for your team? What are you going to say? You're going to say, absolutely, we will find a place for you. And you mentioned the building a bench, and that's exactly what it does. And as you know, you want to be proactive with your recruiting and hiring. You don't want to be on your heels trying to hire when you're desperate, for example, technician roles, right? They're a vital part. We have an amazing group of service pros or technicians on our team. And what happens if one of them decides to move on or go somewhere else, or something happens and they can't, perform that, those duties anymore. And now all of a sudden we have customers that aren't getting service, right? Or phone calls that aren't getting taken if it's a customer service internal role. And so we want to have that bench ready to go and almost a little, not overhired, right? You got to be careful. Right. There's a fine line, but you don't want to be handcuffed to where that one person doesn't show up one day and your whole business is just in turmoil.
For sure. Yeah, that's a dangerous position to be in. And you got to create more security and then that gives you more power too, when you know that your recruiting process works. So you're not held hostage by one of these positions where they know that, like, hey, I'm the only one, and then they start putting the screws to you about more money and making and bending the rules and things. And when employees understand that you've got a great recruiting process in place, then that helps you as a business owner.
No doubt. Well, Kevin, I know we're coming up on time here. So, man, I can't thank you enough for your time, for what you've done. I know for the insurance industry over the years, what you've done for so many friends of mine and around the country, and it's helped so many people. And I know I've talked to you a lot about maybe coming over to the pest control industry, maybe releasing that as one of your verticals, and helping us in this industry, because I do think it's a need. I feel like the basic principles apply to any business or industry. But we sure would love to have you, bring a lot of your expertise over to our industry as well, man.
Yeah. Well, hey, I really appreciate the time, and we are, and by selling the businesses at Allstate and moving on, it creates me to be all full-time here and all in. And so we are going to be strategic about different verticals. And we know that there's a fit. And so we would love to explore that. That sounds
Awesome,
great.
man. Well, hey, thanks for all you do. I hope you have a wonderful Michigan fall weekend. You'll probably be wearing a heavy North Face tonight while we're walking around in swimsuits down here, I
I'm wearing
guess.
shorts right now.
Oh, jeez.
It was so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast. I'm excited to release this one. I'll probably be working on this one now this afternoon, so we'll send you the link.
Well, thank you very much. It's been quite the pleasure, and the rest of our friendship's always been so awesome. And iron sharpens iron. Totally
There you
believe
go.
that. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, it's just a lonely place until you meet other entrepreneurs that you can really mastermind and solve all the problems. I mean, we are, both of us, all of us at the top are just a conglomerate of all of the friends and the top people that we take all their ideas, and I'm a bunch of stolen ideas. That's how I.
That's right. I tell people that all the time. So, man, I appreciate it. I hope you have a good weekend, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks.